Social media has been abuzz with the imminent, or perhaps not so imminent, fight between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Of course, this has been an ongoing negotiation for the last 6 years or so. I'm joined in studio by local ring announcer and boxing analyst Devin Curra to find out if this fight is actually going to happen. Let's get the latest. Devin, thanks for coming in.
Morning, Nick. How you doing?
Good, thanks, and yourself?
Good.
The latest I read was that Manny Pacquiao has agreed to terms which Floyd Mayweather initially laid out. What is the story from his camp now?
The realistic side of it is, even though he's agreed to terms, that doesn't really mean anything. This is the Floyd Mayweather show. It's his contract. He dictates the rules. He decides the date. He decides the venue. He's the A-side fighter. He hasn't signed anything. Pacquiao's agreed because he has to. He's coming off 2 losses. He just came off a win against Algeria, but his stock has decreased. He needs the fight. He's got money problems apparently. He's got tax issues back home. He signed it because he needs it. And it's a big money fight. I mean, he can earn upwards of $60 million for this. Mayweather, he doesn't have to have this fight. He's still got 2 fights left on his Showtime contract, which guarantees him $32 million a fight in excess, so as a base pay for each fight. And he can pick any opponent that he wants. The biggest indicator to me that this fight isn't going to happen came through last night when Oscar De La Hoya, who is the promoter of Canelo Alvarez, who's the redhead Mexican under 154-pound former champion, is looking for another opponent for him. Now, the reason why that has something to do with Pacquiao and Mayweather is because Canelo was going to fight Miguel Cotto. He's had a deal for Miguel Cotto for a while. Miguel Cotto hasn't signed on it. Why? Because he's waiting to see what will happen with Pacquiao and Mayweather. If a deal can't be reached between Pacquiao and Mayweather, Mayweather will fight Cotto. So Oscar De La Hoya going and saying, I'm looking for another opponent for Canelo, basically means that Cotto is likely to be announced as the next opponent for Floyd Mayweather. Pacquiao is going to get left out in the lurch again. As I said, it's absolutely nothing to do with, I mean, Pacquiao can accept all the terms and he can shout from the hilltops that he wants the fight. If Mayweather doesn't want it, he doesn't have to have it.
So clearly a money game, but surely the promoters from all camps across the board realize that this is a fight that people want to see.
You see, therein lies the next problem. Boxing and politics. The promoters, there's so much egos and so much money on this. Showtime, who deals with Mayweather, has a head of sport called Steven Espinoza. Steven Espinoza has been trying to make this fight for the last 6 years. Well, not for the last 6 years, but at least recently for the last year and a half, while Mayweather's been on Showtime. He's failed to do this so badly that the CEO of Showtime has come down, moved Espinoza aside, and now he's trying to get the deal done. Now, for a guy who sits in the boardroom to come downstairs to the head of sport and tell him basically, you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to try and make this fight happen, means the desperation is there because Showtime needs a massive fight for Mayweather because his last couple of pay-per-views haven't done that well because he's been cherry-picking bad opponents. Although his opponents, his last 5 opponents, have not been as bad as Pacquiao's last 5 opponents. Pacquiao's also been guilty of cherry-picking and he hasn't been having great opponents, although he's coming off 2 losses recently, which is the first one to Tim Bradley, which was a disputed decision. And then he got knocked out cold by Marquez. So he comes back, he beats on Chris Algieri, who shouldn't have been there in the first place. He looks all great and he looks all shiny, and people say he's back to his best, he can beat Mayweather. No, it doesn't work like that. There's Top Rank, there's Golden Boy, there's Mayweather's manager, Al Heyman. It's a huge, huge effort to make a deal of this magnitude because there's probably $100 million sitting on the table here to split between both fighters.
Yeah, sure.
Pacquiao will get the short side of that. He'll only get 40 million of the 100 million because it's the Mayweather show.
I mean, I wanted to ask you that. That is one of the terms that he's agreed to, the purse split 40-60. Why does it work out like that?
Basically because you get the A side and the B side. Mayweather's undefeated. He's been at the top of the game ever since I can remember his name the first time I heard it when I was a teenager. Pacquiao's coming off losses. Sure, he's had a great career. Sure, he's a multiple world champion. But MGM Grand is Mayweather's house. May 2nd is Mayweather's date. It's a massive date on the Mexican calendar, which means pay-per-view figures will go through the roof regardless of who he fights, although the general agreement is that a Mexican fighter should fight on that date. He's run out of Mexican fighters to fight. He's beaten them all. So Cotto is going to be a big seller to the Latin American community because he's Puerto Rican. And I just don't believe, you know, the fight is as close as it's been since about 2010, when they tried to make the fight the first time and it got battered off because of the drug testing.
Testing issue, huh?
Basically, Pacquiao back in 2010 wouldn't agree to random blood and urine sampling because what it meant to him, he's a very spiritual guy. He's, I wouldn't say like a simple kind of guy, but he's very spiritual. He believes that if you draw blood from him, he loses his strength. And what he didn't want to do is be working with Freddie Roach on pads training and then have some guy from USADA rock up and say, we need to draw blood from you. And then draw blood and then him carry on. He reckons that he would lose his part of his spirit. He would lose his... Exactly. He thinks a lot like that. Now, people can also point to the fact that, ooh, has he got something to hide? Everybody is subject to this kind of random blood doping and urine sampling. Why doesn't he want to do it? So it shot a couple of theories up in people's minds that he may be on something, which, you know, the guys come up from flyweight all the way to welterweight. And for a guy to put on that much weight and still keep his power and still be able to knock guys out, it's very unheard of. So I'm not saying that he's guilty of anything. It's never been found out. But as soon as he said no to that random urine and blood sampling that laid out by Mayweather, people started going, okay, what's going on here? Is there something amiss? But like I said, this fight is as close as it's ever been. But the biggest indicator that it's not going to happen happened last night when they're starting to look for another opponent for Canelo, because Cotto is not going to sign, and I expect that it's going to be Mayweather versus Cotto announced imminently. Sad as it is.
Final question on the Mayweather-Pacquiao issue. Surely as individuals, you take promoters and the money aside, realize that this would be a true test of what kind of a boxer they are.
Look, both of them are at the back end of their careers now, but it's still a major fight. They're still the two best welterweights in the world, regardless of how old they are. But, you know, it's money and egos, and money and egos in the American way.
Hence the name Money Mayweather.
Exactly. If he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to get out of bed unless you're talking about $30 to $40 million if he doesn't want to.
What a shame.
It's an absolute shame. It's a travesty. The fight will happen. I don't think it's going to happen now. I think it's going to happen in 2016. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because I'm a boxing fan. I want to see it just like anybody else. But the reality of it all is that where there's money and egos and massive egos that you can't understand, like the Las Vegas kind of temperament towards money, I just don't think it's going to happen time soon.